Welcome to A Mason's Work, the podcast where we review Masonic symbols and illustrate how they can be used to solve problems in everyday life. With your host, Brian Mattox, a proud member of the Craftsman Online Media Network.
All right, so we went through this process to deconstruct our own sort of transmutation of gold into lead by turning ambition and desire into gratitude, into a false gratitude that's not really appreciation, but a kind of virtue signaling that we use to essentially commiserate with our colleagues. Okay. Now, again, we're walking through the mechanics of a scenario, and it's one that I experienced at one point in my life. When we start to talk about this for your situation, obviously yours might be wrapped up in a completely different set of causes and effects, and that's okay. But if you're like me, then there's a good chance that what we've been talking about all week is this understanding that oftentimes we create these responses that look wholesome and are essentially masking an underlying discomfort. And in masking that discomfort through this wholesome lens, we justify inaction. This is a super common thing, I think, for people to do. And as we work to deconstruct it and figure out how to respond to it, we have to be able to call these things as they are. When we have these challenging beliefs, we will activate the cable toe, and we'll use the cable toe to constrain our behavior. We'll say things, these limiting beliefs like, I'm not the kind of person who can have a beach house, or I'm not the kind of person who can write a book, or I'm not the kind of person who can have a really fancy car. And when we use our cable toe in conjunction with this virtue signaling kind of stuff, we are weaponizing these processes against ourselves. So how can we deal? How can we take this discomfort and turn it into action that's not paralytic, that's not that doesn't turn into false virtue? It turns into something that is what we probably would consider to be real virtue. And the simple thing to do is, once you've named the gap, I've identified what it is that you're trying to solve. Like, hey, this person has this nice thing. I would like to experience this nice thing or have this nice thing. Put parameters around it. Change the conversation. Wow, that is really nice. I've always dreamed of a house up in the mountains by the lake. Or I've always dreamed of a really nice car. Maybe you can do a trial balloon. You can send up a little signal to see what that looks like. Maybe instead of immediately going to, doubling down on your work and trying to find enough money to afford some of these things, or doubling down on your relationships so you get to that rock star level of I enter the room, maybe you can try and dip your toe in some of these experiences. Maybe you can go rent the beach house for a weekend. Maybe you can try and drive your friend's fast car and see if that's something you really want. Because sometimes when we see things that other people have, we think we want them and we don't. And again, we activate all of the tools we have at our disposal to justify inaction. But if you break it down, big rocks into small rocks, take the smallest possible action towards that step, towards that objective, towards that experience. Maybe even having the experience directly without having to go through all of the stuff to get it. Like, again, renting the beach house. There's few things nicer than having a beach house, and it's having someone else's beach house that you don't have to clean. So when you start to look at things like this and you play with these experiences and begin to sit in some of these discomforts, you realize in a lot of ways just how kind of fictitious they really are. How the mind creates these false beliefs and behaviors. It's more virtuous for me to have less, or it's more virtuous for me to not do this or not do that, not appear opportunistic, not appear maybe, like we have these grand designs and objectives, right? Maybe aspirational kind of stuff is virtuous in its own way. And maybe if we try and pursue some of these things we gloss over and translate into more socially acceptable prisons, maybe you'll stop feeling them to begin with. Maybe you'll be able to turn these signals that your body's providing into the fuel you need to start one small step. Think about it.
The views represented in this podcast are those of the speaker alone and are not representative of any grand or subordinate lodge.
Hi, Brian here. I wanted to thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you have any suggestions or guidance for further episodes you'd like to see or hear, whatever the case may be, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at masonswork.com, and we will try and incorporate your suggestions into a future recording. Thanks.
Freemasonry teaches us that the true work is within, a lifelong journey of reflection, discipline, and discovery. At A Mason's Work, we help Masons bring out their best selves through meaningful self-inquiry and symbolic practice. From personal reflection to lodge engagement, we offer tools that turn symbols into action. Visit us at amasonswork.com. The work is within. The time is now.